Hi, I'm Glenn Hughes.
And I'm Ed Muzio.
For 3 decades, I've been working inside a publicly traded company.
And for over a decade, I've been an entrepreneur supporting companies like Glenn's from the outside.
In this series, we look at the problems and challenges of the modern workplace
and provide our ideas and advice
from the inside
and out.
Here's a question we hear all the time. What do I need to do to become a manager? Ed?
Have your head examined. No, I'm kidding. Besides that, you probably should, but besides that, when someone asks me that question, the first question I ask is, why do you want to become a manager? You and I are both in a professional society that advocates this idea that we also know from our education and background, which is figure out what the real problem is before you solve it. So I want to know, do you want to become a manager because you want to be in charge of people? Do you want to become a manager because you perceive that to be some version of success in your company?
My mother-in-law told me that I need to become a manager because her son became one much earlier than me.
True story. I have at least one person I know who is in an intercultural marriage, and the spouse basically says, I want to see manager on your card because that's a sign of status.
It happens, right? Yeah, frequently.
So that's my first question is, why do you think you want to be a manager? And let's talk about what we think is really going on there, because maybe manager is the right answer, or maybe you can achieve that some other way.
I'll take a completely different tact, which is, I think, when I talk about what it takes to be a manager, I think it's important to understand why, because you can get in your own way if you're pursuing it for the wrong reasons, let's say. Reasons that don't help you become better as an employee, which generally is the way to become a manager. I'm not saying this is the right way, but the way I became a manager was I was an engineer, and I was so good at being an engineer that one day they tapped me on the shoulder and said, Glenn, you're so good at what you do, we want you to stop doing it.
That's pretty common.
It is really common.
And it's a whole different skill set now, yeah.
So get good at what you're doing rather than aiming for the thing that's out there, and the opportunities will come in one way or another. I'm not saying don't have a plan, but I think first focus on being really good at what you're doing right now.
Yeah, and also with that, I think an important notice, at least for anybody who's in an engineer or technology career, notice that when you become a manager, everything you're doing now goes away.
Yeah.
The job of management is a different job. Some people love it, some people hate it, but it's not at all the same. It's the job of getting other people to do things instead of the job of doing things. And I think the professionals I've seen that take the longest to make that mental leap are the ones that have the biggest problem in management. In fact, you could say, some people I've met at least, they didn't become managers until long after they became managers, if you know what I mean. It took them a long time to figure out what the job really was, and a lot of people struggle under them until they get that figured out.
Yeah, so one of the things I like to tell people, some of it is true and some of it is a strategy. I like to say, you'll become a manager after you've already been doing the work of a manager. You'll become a director after you've already become a director. You'll get the VP title when you're already acting like a VP. And by that I mean, you know, the normal process of I want to raise Ed to director level has to get buy-in. And when we go up and say I want to make Ed a director, what we don't want to hear is, Ed, are you sure he's director level? What you want to hear is, I thought he already was one. He's already interfacing with people at the right level. He's managing this gigantic project. I think that leap from employee to manager makes a similar one, which is, if I'm already handling staff meetings when my manager's out of town, if I'm already handling the biggest account, if I'm already stepping in and peer coaching to take that load off of my manager, then it becomes pretty inevitable that when that manager moves on to something else or another opening, they go, Glenn's already doing the work of a manager, let's give him the title.
Well, and by the way, you know, you raise a good point. If you're my manager and you think I should be a director at some point, or if I'm not a manager, you think I should be a manager at some point, the first thing you're going to do is not go make me a manager. You're going to start to give me little opportunities and build on them. So if I'm sitting around wanting to be a manager, what I should be doing is, number one, taking those opportunities when you offer them, and number two, maybe asking for some of those opportunities. Yep. Let me run a little project. Let me do a little more. Let me start to demonstrate to you what I can do in that space so that you start to get a picture of my ability, because if you don't have the idea that I could be one, then you know there's no path there.
Yep, totally agree. So, how will you become a manager?